Welcome to another high value conversation. I'm Mark Jackson, and today I'm super excited to have on Dr. Thomas Oden, and we're going to be talking about energy healing. He's a psychiatrist, brilliant man, and I just love talking to him about the ways that we can change our mood, change our life, handle some of the issues that we're going through, especially when it comes to our energy. So I'm going to go ahead and invite him in right now. We're going to dive into some great questions. I know a lot of times now we're dealing with negative people, negative environments, and you can feel that kind of stuff. So I'm just happy to have him here. Dr. Oden, how are you doing,
Yeah, I'm
sir?
pretty good, man. Pretty good. Thanks for having
Man,
me on.
pleasure to have you here. Thank you for taking the time to be here today and talk about energy healing, bringing enlightenment to this topic that's so important right now nowadays. I'm just glad you took the time to be here. Can you kind of tell us, everybody, kind of who you are?
Yeah, so name is Dr. Thomas Oden. I'm an adult and forensic psychiatrist. I was born and raised in New Orleans and, always had an interest in mental health and knew that I was a lane I wanted to go into for a very long time. So I knew I wanted to go into psychiatry. So I was 19, went to Morehouse, majored in psychology, took 2 years in between med school doing research and working as a psych tech, really seeing the work from a different level of things. And eventually going to med school in Boston and with the BU. After that, did Tulane training for psychiatry and did adult psychiatry. Being back home in New Orleans, that was pretty good. I was able to really get back to my music roots and was DJing for a while and DJ diagnosis, and that was cool. And did adult psychiatry training, then forensic training, and then after that, really began traveling, doing short-term contract work at hospitals and clinics that were in need in the United States. So really saw healthcare systems in different ways, and eventually ended up in Atlanta doing private practice work and adding some elements of integrative health that I felt like were really important to the work and that helped me in my own personal journey of healing as well. And eventually, decided to lean more heavily on virtual care when the whole pandemic thing happened. So, I'm to the point now where I am doing a lot of virtual work. I am working on getting back into those integrative health pieces and having a space again to do the work that I enjoy to do through the practice of Reiki, as well as other integrative health practices like hypnosis and things of that nature.
That's what I love. I mean, you're just such a brilliant man. You're doing good work, and you come with such a passion. And I love the fact that you're not afraid to explore the different type of ways that you can heal people. Right? You're so passionate about helping people with their, mental health and their mood and their life and just being in a well-being state in
Hmm.
this life that we live, that you're like, man, what can I find that really is helpful for people? So I wanted to have you on because the things that you're doing, the work that you're doing is so incredible to me that I wanted to share what you were doing with my audience. So can you tell us how Reiki helps people take care of themselves and protect their energy?
Yeah, sure. So, I first really ran across it kind of randomly. I was looking for my own, I wanted more tool sets to handle the work of being a psychiatrist, particularly after noticing forensic psychiatry training was very intense. I just felt that I was definitely taking that more home with me compared to other types of work in mental health I'd done before. And forensic psychiatry is psychiatry in the law. So you're doing expert witness testimony on different types of cases. Maybe someone's pleading not guilty by reason of insanity because they killed a family member while they were psychotic, and you're helping mitigate and help the court understand that they were ill at the time and they didn't know right from wrong, But those are very heavy cases. You're looking at different images and crime scene photos, and you're talking to victims as well as people who committed the act. And so, there's a lot there, and also just having psychology training. But I knew that there was something missing in my skill set to navigate all of that in a way that I felt honored me as a sensitive person. And I also noticing things intuitively as well. And so it's around 2015 when I really encountered a Reiki practitioner in California, and she was recommended to me, and I really enjoyed the session. I got a lot out of it. I felt like she knew from day one that I would benefit from being taught the practice, and so it was a very slow process of like going, seeing her maybe every other month or so, and to finally realizing, okay, I do need to learn from her, and she's my teacher even now. Shout out to Daily Little, and I think that Reiki itself is a Japanese healing technique that's over 100 years old. It's the practice of placing hands, and through attention, you're sending healing energy that can help the body's ability to heal itself across the board, though, most people find it relaxing to get Reiki. I think we're still figuring out exactly how to measure all the effects from it because it's very subtle in nature in the way that you could have a Reiki session with someone and they really slept very well that night and felt, more relaxed the next day. You can have a Reiki session with someone, maybe it's actually releasing an existing emotional state that's in the body. Or some people can notice they have more energy, so they're more motivated to get things done. But exactly how long that lasts, how frequently you need to do it, I think that's from person to person, and any person that you work with who practices will just let you know, like, come around whenever you want to with that type of healing. At least that's how it was introduced to me. And so it does involve someone lying on a massage table. You're placing hands gently on certain parts of the body, but it's not a massage. Sometimes you're placing hands above, you're placing hands like lightly on top. But again, the goal is for, relaxation and provide healing, but still a very subtle energy, a subtle type of healing practice that works well within really the framework of existing medical knowledge, because you are seeing it added in cancer centers now, which is pretty interesting. But the practice of like placing hands and doing intention with healing, that's old. It's a very old thing, and in many indigenous cultures around the world have been doing that for quite some time. But Reiki is specific to Japan.
She's been effective like for years in helping people kind of like, block off that negativity, or when we feel like that shift. And I mean, I know for a fact, like when I'm in a bad environment, I feel it like inside. It feels almost like a disruption of my energy of inside of my body. I think I've just recently, all of us have kind of become more aware of energy. You hear people talking about like, I'm staying out of the negative energy, or I don't have energy for that, and it's cool to hear people kind of have more of an awareness of that is what's going on inside of our body. I mean, I've even heard the term emotion stands for energy in motion,
Right.
And you're saying that by, kind of going through a Reiki session, you can kind of have your energy healed by someone who knows how to, please just go deeper.
Right.
Like, so you said somebody.
Yeah. So it's essentially it works through the chakra system, and it's like more like Eastern culture of seeing a different layer of the body, because of course we learn in biology just cells and tissues and tissue organs and organ systems and whatnot, and you look at like anatomy and there's a lot of detail there. But when you look at Eastern medicine practices, they discuss often the flow of energy, that really the circuitry, that all the veins and the arteries, there's still something flowing within that's more subtle, and they call it chi, and supposed to be life force energy. But ultimately, the center points in the body, from bottom to the top of the head, basically is acknowledged across the world as some type of energy centers, and several of them. And ultimately, that's where, if you're looking at, I guess, the body as an information highway, the chakras are like the subway, like, like Grand Central Station, right? The different stations, and then all the different circuitry that goes from that. But those are the middle parts called the chakras, essentially. And with Reiki, you do help balance that out so that things are flowing where they need to flow. But there's more than a way to do that. I think there's always going to be room to understand some of the more like physical implications of that, or physiological implications of that. But, I'm really enjoying seeing online that many people are talking about vibes and energy and how things affect them internally. More, therapies are coming out about somatic therapies, movement, dancing, moving energy within your body, recognizing that emotional states can show up in different parts of your body as well, which I've always enjoyed as a client getting Reiki for myself, and sometimes going in thinking I'm going to, work on one part, but then, someone's saying that, oh, they're noticing something in my neck, and that's bringing up things about, a family member, so like there's just kind of, everything's very much interconnected. I think there always going to be room for us to more deeper our knowledge of the interconnectedness between things, like it's not just the brain, it's not just the body. Sometimes I see somatic therapists really try to discount the neurology part of it, and then vice versa. But, there's clearly more things to be learned within just seeing that all as one complete system.
I like what you said about the interconnectedness, because I mean, if you do any amount of brain science, you'll come to find out that the energy that's going between the synapses and in your brain that are like causing you to have thoughts are part of the energy that's triggered from the senses and parts of your body. So it's all interconnected. So tell me this, how can we, as people who are not really educated about Reiki and the energy healing of our body, how can we tell that we may need to seek out some energy healing?
Right. Yeah, I think it first has to start with just the acknowledgement that that's even a thing, that you are emanating energy out of you, there's a lot of science that's already well established from the 1800s that essentially, if you're conducting if you have a conductor, electricity goes through it, it generates a field, you know. And so like Faraday's law, Ampere's law, very basic things in science. Most people forgot in high school, but it was something taught in high school. But our heart sends electric magnetic energy that goes through our body. Our body is like a very big conductor because it connects to tissue surrounding everything. And so that is conducting electricity. That means it's conducting a field. And so like that's established. We have that. It's just more so understanding what does that entail, how to measure that. And if you can measure it, what exactly can we get out of that, you know, from a place of understanding disease. I think there's more room just from my work as a psychiatrist that hasn't been involved in energy work. I feel like there's probably going to be more emotional aspects of that that can be measured. I think because we know already if you have cancer, for example, that's parts of the body that's not working right? You have tissues that are growing in places or cells growing in places they're not supposed to grow. And so we know things are getting messed up. So clearly, I think everyone can understand that if you're going to be, you know, discharging chemicals and stuff, and that's like outside, you know, it's like pumping out of your body, that it's probably going to look off, right? So we know those things already, but it's more so like, what else can we get from measuring that field around you? Because we use that in like MRIs and EKGs. They're using that same premise, but you know, there may be more emotional things that we can detect from understanding that we have that energy field around us. But I think once we kind of set that as a understanding and just kind of get behind the whole, like, that sounds weird and just acknowledge it for what it is. Like you literally have a bubble around you and it's like a byproduct of a lot of like thermal energy, electromagnetic energy, physiological processes, basically cells, you know, doing things, and the chemicals are causing all that to radiate out. And, you know, the moment we can kind of start there, then that kind of gets more interesting because now, okay, what do I notice around me? How do I feel around people? How do I feel in environments? How do I center myself in environments? How do I ground in environments? You know, once you have an understanding of that, you know, I think that's where you'll have more acknowledgement of your sensitivities. And then from there, you'll be able to kind of seek out things that you feel helps that. Because I don't, you know, there's some people may feel called to do Reiki. Some people, I believe, already do some type of energy transference, energy healing without even knowing it, not realizing they're sensitive to that, not realizing that they improve spaces just from being there. You know, that, you know, people, they light up the room, right? That's like a term that people say, you know, what if your energy is in some capacity influencing the room around you, which, you know, seems to be the case just from what I've learned so far. And so I know that's a long-winded answer to the question, but I think it just comes from like acknowledgement. Then once you have the acknowledgement, then you can move forward and just acknowledging who you are, acknowledge your sensitivities, and then just moving forward, moving in a place of awareness and being present at the same time.
I fully agree with you because there's times when you can feel like, hey, even when we were kids, right? The static shock. You go to get
Right.
get the sock or walk across the carpet. You're
Right.
like, oh, that's energy,
Yeah.
right? Also, you know, like you said, when you're tired. So people don't, you know, maybe our energy doesn't affect our thoughts, but it definitely does because when you're tired, what do you say? I don't feel like doing that. Maybe something that you would have done, but because you're on low energy or your battery is low, you don't do things that you would have done, or your mood is changed because of the fact that you don't have energy, or you go into a room, you see somebody you don't like, right? Like you just said,
Mm-hmm.
in the opposite direction, you're like, I don't feel comfortable now, or I want to leave, right? Your energy, the energy you came in with, you don't have anymore, right? You went in
Right.
one way and something shifted it to the other way, whether it was the mood, the people, the environment, the space, the aesthetic, it got changed,
Right.
you know? So I definitely can see areas in life where we, as for personal examples, can acknowledge when we recognize, but maybe didn't fully understand that we had that energy field.
Right. Right. Exactly. And you know, there's a lot of like a lot of us are very connected, even though we don't see ourselves that way. And that's where you see people talking about quantum physics, which, you know, I try to stay away from a ton because I mean it's very easy. The quantum field, and that's like the, you know, the one stop grab to kind of explain things that aren't really that well explained yet. But we all come from the Big Bang, right? There's like a certain finite number of atoms that were just kind of like made from that. And so, you know, essentially that's how we're kind of being, there's different reasons why people's energy affects you and how your energy affects things and spaces, because I mean, ultimately we come from the same stuff,
Well,
you know?
I mean, I
So
think also you
yeah.
don't have to understand something all the way. to understand how you can feel it,
Right.
sense it, be it. Like, I don't have to
Exactly.
understand how gravity works to be still stuck to the earth or decide not to jump off a building, right?
Mhm.
So I might not understand the quantum mechanics that go into all the different levels of energy and interconnectedness of everything on earth. But someone like yourself who took the time to dig deeper and study can come and help me receive the benefits of your understanding.
Right, right. And I think there's a lot of different ways to do that, and they can go in different directions. I feel like, um, unfortunately, due to health inequities, not everybody gets exposed to the things that would benefit them most or have access to those
Since you
resources.
say
And
that, let
so,
me ask you
mm,
this. Do you think we're in a mental health crisis?
oh, definitely. I mean, it seems to have gotten worse. I mean, we were already on a steady like this incline of just mental health disorders getting worse, and there's not a lot of psychiatrists, there's not a lot of therapists. You have a lot of psychiatric nurse practitioners that are helping as well to cover, but there's just good chunks of the United States where it's very hard to see a psychiatrist. Now, the pandemic really helped with virtual care. That did enhance access in places where someone would have maybe had to wait a lot longer to see someone. But we are seeing, just really heightened mental health disorders, a lot of treatment resistant disorders. I think the anxiety disorders really increased a lot as a result of the isolation and all of the measures that took place during the pandemic. And so, but the numbers weren't looking good. The suicide rates were not looking good prior to COVID. So that's only even worse now. So we're seeing the need increase for sure. And you're seeing also the healthcare system going through changes, and a lot of nurses, are leaving just due to like pay inequity and things of that nature. So, it's definitely in a weird time
Mhm.
where we're going to have to see how things look moving forward, and really have to enhance access on top of enhance our tools.
I think the beauty of you being here right now is I think people who have never had access to, like you're saying, it's hard to get access. And why I've been trying to do more mental health on high value conversations is for people to be able to meet a therapist without having to call for a session or understand that they're just humans too, and that you can establish a comfort level. Because the one thing I've been impressed about during this time is that we've had more people speak about their mental health in a less stigmatized way. Like, I
Mhm.
am going through things, and I think the only gap we have left to bridge now is kind of the one we're addressing right now, where seeing what's available, seeing how that feels to be able to talk to a therapist and meet someone, so that it's okay for you to ask or okay for you to Google, set an appointment and stuff, because your comfort level has been established. So a lot of us grew up with psychotherapy and psychology being made fun of in our media,
Mhm.
right? You're crazy, or you're gonna go see the shrink, or you need help, right? And a lot of in our social circles, I'll be like, I ain't crazy, ain't nothing wrong with me, right? So being able to now acknowledge that it's not your fault, that maybe you need to talk to somebody and just be able to externalize, even if it's just for that, to externalize to someone who will listen without interrupting, or listen without being defensive, or talk to somebody who's not the person that's causing it, right? I think is a great thing that is occurring at the same time when more people are having issues or feeling
Yeah.
like they're want to address
Right.
issues.
A lot of people are like, it's by the time someone sees me, they probably should have came in months beforehand, and so I do catch things as a psychiatrist, since I'm providing medication management from a certain level of acuity level. And I think people really underestimate the benefit of getting an actual diagnosis, because once you have a diagnosis, you're able to actually seek out whatever you want to seek out. Like, I give a diagnosis, that doesn't mean I may recommend a medication plan, but it doesn't mean you actually have to follow the plan. It's really up to you what you want to do, how you want to, what you want to do with treatment. But once you have a diagnosis, hey, you want to work with acupuncture, it's fine. If you want to work with someone who does something more holistic, fine. Like, you can do that, or like look at it from a place of like, okay, what kind of physical workouts do I need to do, or fasting. But as
Mm-hmm.
long as you have a diagnosis, you're able to really be in a place of more empowerment, so that you understand your symptoms, how they're kind of measured. You can track it over time. You can use a mood tracking app. I think a lot of people are really nervous about being diagnosed with something because of the stigma, because of the label. But the more you have an understanding, because like, I find out I had blood, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I had hypertension. I was like, okay, you know, now it's time to make some changes, but what if I had never gone to really measure my own blood pressure, to actually
Wow.
go to a doctor to do that? Then that just gets worse over time. And now I'm taking care of it from a later time. So, it's just really important to get diagnoses. Don't be too afraid of it. and, you know, just take it as information, and what you do with it, it's fine. Mental health records are very private. They're very secure. They're very hard to get released unless a court is court ordered, you know, so there's a certain level of confidentiality with mental health records compared to like therapy records or psychiatry records compared to just standard medical records. So I felt like that was something to explain to people, because I know sometimes people are like, who's going to find out, or how does that kind of show up?
Yeah, for sure.
But ultimately, again, once you have a diagnosis, that can really open up the doors of how you want to take care of it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because people can feel protected and safe, and be able to move with a little bit of security. That's really important. So let me ask you this. As a psychiatrist, in the years that you've studied, like you said, even from forensics to private patients to virtual, by comparison, in-person therapy or talking to somebody, medication or energy healing, is it a balance, or is one better than the other? Have you moved to a preference?
Yeah. Good question. I think a good example would be trauma, right? Because there's so many different approaches when a traumatic thing takes place. And the first 6 months, you know, it's not called PTSD yet. Even if you have the symptoms, it has to occur for a duration of time. But from, I guess, my understanding of medicine to neurology to, you know, energy work, I will say that, yeah, traumatic event happens. It's hard to get access to a psychiatrist as soon as possible, but actually, you know, there are certain things the brain is doing in the midst of an acute stressful event that actually certain medications work very well in getting rid of that. And the sooner those symptoms are better controlled, the less likely it is to turn into a chronic condition. And so, you know, I see it at like a very, like medicine, psychiatry, when it comes to things in high acuity, so if the acutely has happened, medicine still holds top, in my opinion, when it comes down to the best thing you can do is seek medical attention for certain ailments. You know, we're really good at that for sure. Now, when it comes to maintenance and how you look at, because trauma is not just, you know, it's affecting parts of the body. So now your nervous system is affected, right? That's when you can get into, you know, the breath work, to the yoga, to, you know, the different types of like movement therapies and somatic therapies, and then like energy work, and just seeing how that all works together. But, you know, from an acute traumatic event, really, you know, the medical attention part, the psychiatry part, the medication management part, and also like, you know, the therapy, that fits somewhere in the middle for sure. I mean, the moment you have someone to talk to about things, the better. Someone holding space is very powerful and very useful as well. They have more therapeutic techniques like EMDR, which is like eye movement type of therapies, where someone's kind of guiding you through whatever took place, but they're having you look at different parts. I guess you're tracking their finger, and it's mapping certain eye movements that have been known to help, like with different types of neuroplasticity measures to help whatever traumatic event you're working through. And so, you know, it takes more than one way to navigate that. That's just one example of a condition, a traumatic emotional event, and the different ways in which you can approach it. And so, you know, it's hard to look at it all like this. It's just, and it's hard to say what order, but you never go wrong seeking medical attention. But the moment you can have access to tools to look at what took place differently and have the proper support and the resources to access to proper support, that will over time help, you know, this from turning into like a debilitating chronic issue.
I love how you put that. There's so many options, and there's not one magic bullet, right? There's no magic sequence. Right. We talked prior to the call, and you were saying, you know, what I really want people to understand the most is that it's not just about one single thing or a quick fix. Like, therapy takes time. Like, it's a process, and there are many things available. So you have to see what works for you, but that first step is seeking. You know what I mean?
Right. And I left out psychedelics, for example. That's even like another lane. I'm not trained in that, but, you know, there's a lot of emerging treatments that seem to be effective. Having access to it really matters. How soon you can get access to it tends to really, you know, do a lot there. But I think as we continue to, there's more room, there's more like segue going into more research going into integrative health approaches. And I think over time, we're going to be able to see more better, like, defined algorithms for that.
So we have a question here. Patera asks, can you talk more about just how breathwork and yoga kind of manage mental changes? And is that also like with your energy, like same as Reiki, like the way that those benefit you?
Yeah, I'm not particularly trained in breathwork. I've been a client of it, you know, and it seemed to in some way activate like your parasympathetic nervous system. Like the sympathetic nervous system is more involved with like, kind of stress responses and different physiological responses. And the parasympathetic nervous system is more, they call it like rest and digest. It's like the kind of classic way it's defined, although it's more involved in that. And it seems like breath work is like activating something with the nerve, the vagus nerve, that helps to like bring about more of the parasympathetic nervous system, which will help ultimately like slower heart rate, deeper breathing, better blood flow in different areas, and likely other types of physiological effects that someone that's trained in breath work will be able to better define. But so breath work really does help, and it does seem to connect more with like the nervous system in a way that's really good. And the more like deeper breaths you take, more blood flow, more oxygenation, that just helps, tissues and organ systems. But when you look at it, combining that and energy work, like the energy emitting from you is ultimately from all those processes taking place. And so, they are connected. But again, it's hard to kind of determine like which one is better than the other. I always subscribe to like, I'm gonna do as much as I can. I'm gonna
Yeah,
go on
man.
you.
I love like I
I'm
love
gonna go on
this.
YouTube. I'm gonna
Yeah,
YouTube
yeah.
breathwork exercises. I just did it like this past Sunday. Inhaling 4 breaths, holding 4 breaths. Like I was just watching this. I guess it's been 5 minutes doing that on YouTube. There's a bunch of stuff on YouTube now. And so I would just utilize technology and not just be on here swiping and pressing the likes on stuff.
Hey,
But there's a lot of things
hey.
you can learn on YouTube. I'm not knocking those things either. I'm just saying that there's just really room to learn a lot online and learn a lot on YouTube. And there's a lot of like things that sometimes people. I will say that it gets a little tricky because sometimes you look at certain things and next thing you know, there might be a spiritual associating with it, and then there's like some dogma attached to it. So
Mhm.
sometimes it can be murky when it comes down to someone kind of taking out they're adding spiritual things to it, which I'm not discounting those things. It just makes it hard to just focus on the healing when sometimes there's another narrative around it that
A
could maybe
narrative
get in the way of
attached
that.
to it.
Yeah,
But that's good when you have somebody like you to kind of say, Dr. Oden, what do you think about this? Or, is
right.
this a good video? When you have that person in your life. And so I'm just glad that you're here. I just thank you for being here and taking the time. I know you have a busy schedule. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to be here
Yeah.
and talk to everybody. Do you have like any final thoughts or advice you want to give about Reiki and energy healing? And can you just tell everybody how they can get in touch with you? Because I think you say you do virtual. So I think, I just think people would like to follow you and even just understand more as you continue to speak
Right.
about it and do your talks.
Right, right. I think for now, because like currently my private practice, I haven't been taking any new patients lately, which is kind of like nice because like I like to talk about this stuff, and I'm not like trying to get your
Yeah,
money.
yeah,
You know what I
just
mean?
be out here
But
with us helping. You
just
can help as
trying,
many people as
like
thank you for being here.
like I'm busy and full a little bit right now. But
Yeah.
my goal is to get back into it more. I mean, my social media, Dr. Thomas Oden, I do put a lot of tips on there. I do plan on getting more content out about these concepts because I just really I think that there was a lot of different, narratives around the pandemic, and a lot of people in holistic circles, kind of viewing the medical field in certain ways. And, I think that there's a lot of healing to be done, and there's different types of healers, whether you're a musician or an artist or, visual artist, music artist, like, or like culinary arts, there's so many different ways to be a healer in this world and affect people positively. I think that, there's going to be always a need for people to be out there giving content and just showing people how to do it. I'm very We're all learning things, and I just want to be known for someone that can provide reliable information. But my goal has always been, what can I take away from these things that like someone can really do in their day to day to help add more quality to their lives, especially when you're in the midst of something stressful. And one of the things I recently started doing that I kind of fell off from doing, for a few months, was really like getting into nature, like putting my bare
Mm.
feet to the ground. Like that's something that it sounds simple, but when you get busy and you're working, you look up, it's dark outside, you can really miss out on certain habits. And so that has been something I've done like lately, and I can tell that it just really centers me, and whatever you're navigating in life. Because many people say, "Oh, I don't have enough time to meditate. I don't have time to do deep breathing," but yet like you spent like 20 minutes online checking something, but you forgot the time, because it really does affect your time. And I think we're going to have to like, because technology is growing, AI is growing, is very helpful. It's going to be something that people better embrace, but also kind of learning how to utilize in a way that doesn't wear us out. Because I think we are going to see over time more data on like how electronics may affect our bodies. That's still something that's not very clear, but we know for sure you checking your phone at night, that does affect your sleep quality. You have less melatonin, the chemical that gets released when it's like dark out in your brain. So you're more likely to have insomnia symptoms. And I think that, yeah, you check your phone at midnight, you may have gone back to sleep in 20 minutes and now you went back to sleep in 40 minutes. That adds up over time, and so I think we're going to have to just kind of learn how to, we're getting busier, now we're just getting alerts all the time. I think my phone alerted, I got to check an email soon. And, it's like we're supposed to be in all these places at once constantly. And we're going to have to learn how to be efficient in our self-care and how to really balance, living in a fairly complicated world, and so just trying to find those, just being open-minded, if you feel called to try out a healing modality, or you have a friend that does Reiki, hey, hit them up, see if they want to practice or whatnot. There's a lot of different things you can do. But again, I can't stress enough that it's important to get your basic labs, important to, just get your health checkups, make sure you take care of that. But know that there's different ways you can heal, different people you can talk to for that. Don't be afraid of getting a diagnosis so that can guide your treatment. And I'm always, around. I mean, people ask me questions online all the time for things, and if I can answer clearly, I will. If I can't, I won't. So I'm always open to field questions through my messaging system, through Instagram. But yeah, look forward to sharing more in the future and providing information and just being an educator. That's something that's always important to me.
Brother, I just thank you for your time. Thank you for our relationship, 20 plus years. You've always been a mentor in my life, somebody I look up to, admire. I love everything that you do and the place that it comes from, because you always have been a person who led, but not because you wanted to be in the spotlight or be seen or for some type of self-gratification. It was always because you were able to be out there with the most generosity and the one who was willing to go get the knowledge and give it back, or even just look at your profession. You help others heal, and it's just amazing everything that I've watched you do. And I just thank you so much for being here and taking your time and sharing that knowledge with everyone who was in attendance today.
I appreciate it because, healers need healing too. And a lot of this came from me working on myself and trying to better myself. And so when I learn things that I feel like could be of use to other people to understand, I'm just willing to share that.
Man, thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate it, brother. You take it easy.
Yes, sir.